Okay. Howdy, folks. We're doing a vlog. I don't know how long it's been since I did my last vlog, but anyway, I thought it'd be good to do a little check-in. Truth be known, I was going to have some other video drop this weekend, but the guys over at West System who are supposed to review the video and give me the thumbs up, or I don't know. I guess it's Turkey Day down there, so they were gone, out of the office. Anyhow, no big deal. We'll do a little quick and dirty here today and let you know what's been happening. So, as most of you might have deduced, if you're following me along, as I was down in Denmark for a good stretch in September, basically all of September, tail end of August, I was in Denmark in Langeland with my friend Mikkel Pa, and we were doing a bunch of stuff down there, doing some video things and some course development, and taught a little course on building a toolbox, which went really well. We only had a couple students that made it out there, but that's okay. We had great little one-on-one, and one of those students happened to be one of my followers here on YouTube. So how you doing there, Martin? It was really great spending a bit of time with you and working on that toolbox. Anyhow, you've seen a few of the videos that I've come out with about some of my experiences in Denmark. Truth be known, I did a crap job of filming while I was down there, and I'm kind of kicking myself. I don't know what was with me, but I gotta, if I'm gonna do any travel videography, I gotta really switch up how I'm doing it. I'm not sure what that will entail, but so we got a couple of videos that came out, and I think there'll maybe be one more. Since then, I apologize for being very sporadic about getting videos out. I've just not gotten back into my groove since I've been back. I don't know what it is, but we'll eventually get there. Mostly it's because I just haven't had a regular work schedule. Things have been all over the place. A few little things I'm doing around the shop to try and fix things up. This workbench, for one thing, I've been finally put a tail vise on it. I have had the hardware for this flippin' vise sitting underneath this bench for 25 years at least, maybe closer to 30. When I worked at Lee Valley Tools many years ago, I picked up this hardware package for an old traditional tail vise, and I just have never gotten around to putting it on. So I finally did, and my report on that is it was a pain in the ass to fit that thing on there. So it's no wonder I didn't spend the time doing it earlier. But it's done now, and hopefully it'll get some use. If nothing else, I no longer have the hardware floating around under the bench. Now it's nailed onto the end of the bench. So the last few weeks, I've been down at Cowichan Bay, which is a little town about an hour's drive north of Victoria here where I am on Vancouver Island. And Cowichan Bay has got a maritime center that is just a little bit of a gem. It's a museum of sorts. I mean, there's a bunch of interesting little artifacts in there. There's some dugout canoes. There's a bunch of sort of more local craft. There is a great collection of outboards if you're into that sort of thing. And we got one of the world's greatest outboard whisperers down at Cowichan Bay, who has been floating around there for years, a guy named Tony. If you have a seagull that needs repairing, Tony is the guy who's going to know how to do it. So anyhow, so the Maritime Center has a mandate for doing courses, and if you're a member of the Maritime Center, you get access to the workshop. So long as there is staff on hand manning the workshop, you can get in there and work on projects on your own. And of course, they do regular woodworking courses, some basic, making cutting boards and stools and things like that for entry-level woodworkers. But then we also do a traditional lap straight course every year. To date, they've done 37 lap straight courses, I believe. I've taught it a few times now, and so this year we introduced a new boat to the lineup for the first time. Up until now, it's always been a sort of an Ian Outrid acorn dinghy that they've been building. It's a slight variation on it, to be honest, because it's been modified a little to suit the course. But this year I introduced building the Campbell River Tyee boat. So this is a boat that was originally designed and built by Ned Painter of Painter's Lodge fame. So that's a very well-known sport fishing lodge up in the north end of the island. Hollywood glitterati used to go there, like John Wayne and Bob Hope, and a bunch of these characters have gone there over the years. And it's known for bringing in just, trophy size spring salmon. And so there's a little pool of water outside of in the Campbell River area that is called a Tyee pool. Now a Tyee is a spring salmon that reaches 30 pounds or more. And they have a thing called a Tyee club. So once you've caught one of those fish, you end up in the Tyee club, you get a little gold fish hook pin for your hat. So going after these Tyees is the thing. And this pool has, for ever since the 1920s, been restricted to human-powered boats only. So you can get into them in a power boat, but once you're in there, all of your trolling and such has to be done under oars. And so Ned Painter developed this type of boat that is sort of idealized to fishing this particular bit of water. And earlier last year, I got together with Jim Tolpin, a woodworking author. Many of you probably know of him. And Jim and I went down there. We went and looked at a bunch of original Tyee boats and took some measurements off of it. And I've also had some lines that I took off one that I had in the workshop at one point. And so I've developed a set of plans for that. Jim produced an article, which was in Watercraft magazine back in the summer, I think the July, August issue. And I've introduced this Tyee boat as the new boat that we're building at the Cowichan Bay. Now, the reason for changing the design is because the whole point of the Maritime Center is to sort of promote local maritime history, and therefore we really needed a boat that had some local heritage. And so I thought the Tyee boat was a great example. We had a great time building this boat. 10-day course spread out into 2 work weeks. We had 5 participants plus the shop manager, Miles. Miles has only been at the center for about a year or so, and so he has not been through the lap straight course such that he has had any direct experience with it, and he's not a boat builder himself. He's a cabinet maker. So Miles took part as well and sort of assisted with teaching as well as participating in the building activity. Everybody had a great time. Now, we had Miles, his back went out the last couple days, and one of the participants fell sick on the last day. So we felt just a little bit short of completing the boat entirely. Just had a few interior components that were left to do, but otherwise it went really, really well. And we had a great range of participants, some people who have been seasoned hobby woodworkers, some that had never touched tools in their life before. And we had a young woman from Germany, a woman named Lucy, who was a professional cabinet maker, who joined us as well. And everybody got along fantastic. We had a really, really good time. Here's a little model of the boat, such as it is. As you know, I like to do models of the projects that I'm working on. So this was just a preliminary, quick and dirty model. I took the lines that I drew up and just quickly knocked them out on cardboard to just see how it would proportion out. The original boat's roll is 14 feet long, and we reduced this down to 12 feet just to make it a little more compact for the build at the Maritime Center. Normally the boats we built were just 10, so we didn't want to expand the size of the boat too much because we still got to get it done within that time frame. And there's limited space in the workshop, so we thought 12 would be a good size. On the subject of model making, I've always maintained that doing even the simplest model can probably reveal some things to you that are enlightening and useful. And one of the things we discovered when building this boat was we had made all the parts, made the backbone. When we dropped it on the mold, it didn't sit quite right. And what it turned out was the stem had about an extra 2 inches of length to it, as in like the amount I'd allowed for it to extend beyond the working portion of the stem and onto the strong back was a little bit too long. And so we quickly modified the strong back to allow the stem to drop down past it, and then it sat perfectly on its lines. I'm still at a loss as to where I made that mistake. Somewhere in the translation from the lofting to the mylars to the finished drawing. So I got to go work my way back and find that mistake and correct it all. But I just now picked up this model that I made. And when I was doing this model, I noticed something was a little out of whack, and I thought it was just me kind of working fast. And sure enough, I can see that this stem is sitting relatively 2 inches high. It wasn't jiving up with the backbone or with the keel. And if I would allow this to sort of come down just that little bit, I know it's going to fit properly. This should have been my clue that something was amiss, and I should have been checking the drawings back then, but I didn't, because I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm just doing a sloppy job of this model. And likewise, the transom looks like it's sitting out by just a tiny little bit, and when we were building the actual boat, there was a little bit of a discrepancy between how the keelson wanted to sit and the height of the transom. which I put off to the people who are working on those components being a little bit fudgy with their pencil lines, you know? So I've sort of rethought about how we would approach it in the future to make sure we don't have that the slight misalignment that was happening. Like we worked our way through it, which is fine. And that's part of the process of building is, you know, you discover some errors or misjudgments or mismeasurements and you adjust. So so it's interesting how even this most rudimentary scale model, as quick and dirty as I threw it together, with the inaccuracies of building at this scale, are revealing some things that happened in the full-size boat. And so I maintain that model making is really, really valuable. And this is probably, I don't know, half an hour of farting around or something like that to knock that together. So I know what I'm going to be doing is before I go and build this boat again, I'm going to be doing a larger scale model. I'm going to go up to like a quarter scale and fully plank it because there's a couple of other anomalies that happened in the planking process that I want to try and work out what was going on there and how to fix it. I'll touch on that in a moment. So one of the things I've found with lap straight planking is there is a tendency every now and then for the planks to start wanting to rise off molds. Specifically, I find it happens on the first and last mold. In between, it's usually all right on the money. But the first and last mold, because there's so much twist in the bow and there's so much twist up here, it can be a little bit hard to sort of get them to sit just so. And in the back, things are a little more neutral, but for some reason I have found that lap straight planks, the first few are fine, and then you start to hit the turn of the bilge and they start to want to lift a little tiny bit. And I don't know why it's doing that and whether or not it's a question of how I spile for the planks or how I fit the planks. And it's usually a phenomenon that I've just sort of worked through and not worried about it too much. But this time, things started to go a little awry as we got farther along. And first, this back plank was lifting up a little bit much. And so we got to sort of work around that because we can no longer use the mold to set the bevel properly. But it increased with the next one and then the next one. So by the time we were throwing the shear plank on, we actually had lifted off like the last two molds, I think, entirely. And the midship one was starting to lift off as well. And so we had very little information to interpret the wind of the bevel, which was actually, I don't mind that that happened because it was a great exercise for these students to learn about how do you deal with this. And so we worked out a really interesting method of using winding sticks to sort of work out the bevel. So we had the transom, which we knew was fixed, and we had sort of a midships one, which we knew was good. And so we'd put a winding stick on those. And then in between, we were just trying to find a relative winding bevel from one to the next. And by using by getting the bevel started and then adding a winding stick to it, meaning we'd attach a little stick right onto the bevel, you could see how they're progressing. So we'd have a winding stick where it's good and a winding stick at the transom. And then we just check and see if the one in between is jiving with those two, either following the same trend or just to make sure it's not diverging from it in some weird way. And it worked really nicely, and it sort of fell in line with a free-form building method that I've been wanting to explore anyway. So it was a great learning experience for both me and the students. The boat turned out great in the end. Lines are a little different than planned. That's not a big deal as far as I'm concerned. The educational results of these things going a little awry far outstripped having this boat land on its exact originally designed lines anyway. So that was really great. Now, next project coming up, contract is not signed, so I don't want to jinx it. But in theory, the next project coming up is a Polesboat boat, which is it's going to be 15-foot power boat. It's just going to be run with an outboard. The original ones had inboards in them, but we're putting an outboard on there, and it's going to be an electric outboard. And so it's just a displacement hull. It's not going to go fast or anything like that. And we are going to be strip building it. Considering that I've been building boats for like 30 years, I have only like twice worked on a strip built boat, and I've never built one in its entirety. I just sort of helped out somebody with one and finished off a kayak somebody had started and didn't complete. So I'm not a strip boat builder. Don't really even like the idea of the process, but we decided to go with this specifically because the customer did not want a lap strike boat. And so the other alternatives become cold molding, which is, it's kind of involved, to be honest. To do a good cold molded boat, you almost need a strip built boat to start with, or something along those lines that gives you a solid enough hull that you can vacuum bag if you want. I mean, of course, you can cold mold without vacuum bagging, but it makes sense to do it. And or Carvel or batten seam or something like that. Anyway, none of those really fell in line with what the ultimate budget is going to be for building. So we decided to go with strip building. So again, I knocked out a quick and dirty model. The lines I've got for the postable boat I have were ones taking off an existing boat, and they aren't faired. They're pretty gamey looking lines, so I'm going to have to do a whole fairing process when I loft it. But anyway, I was just working off the plans that I had to knock out this model. And I really just wanted to see what would happen if I just started stripping from the shear line and how it would resolve itself as we got to the keel, and whether or not that was going to be a good method to use. Sometimes with strip building, people will sort of set up a plank midships that sort of is neutral and then work up and down from that. And sometimes having the strips running off of the shear line, which you then cut. Or sometimes, as in the case, if you watched Bob Esmer's video about building Victoria, which was Acorn to Arabella's tender, he had a system where he strip built the top half was running with the shear, and then he stopped, and then he had a separate run following the bottom of the boat, strip building from the keel out in a different orientation, which worked well for that particular design. But anyway, I've decided this is going to work okay. What I will do is I think I'm going to add some, we like to use the term steelers, but in fact it's kind of gainers, which just means I'm going to add a few wedges like in the bow to sort of raise up the lines of the strips here. So by the time I get to the keel, I'm just getting a straight curved shot, and I'm not trying to twist them around the bow so much, because that feels like that was not going to work out well. So I'm hopeful for that, and the plan is to strip it with the top portion done in red cedar, and then the bottom portion done in Douglas fir, so that we get greater impact resistance in the lower portions of the boat. And I'm thinking I might go with yellow cedar for the top, 6 inches or something, where the shear is, to allow for where I'm going to be putting fasteners in for rub rails and stuff like that, because it's just a little more rot resistant than red cedar, and a little denser and stuff like that too. So I think I might do that if I've got the stock on hand. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. That should get started in a couple of days if the customer gets back to me with a signed agreement and sends a check my way for some materials. So to that end, I've you know what I did this time for the first time ever. I put together a spreadsheet to work out calculations for this. I'm glad I did, because over the course of the development of the project, we've changed gears a bunch of times about what's going to go into the interior and stuff like that. And I had taken the time to sort of create this spreadsheet that allowed me to sort of crunch numbers. And so that allowed me to sort of, as we work towards our final agreement, tweak those numbers without it being a huge amount of labor. Because normally I just do it all on paper, sort of by guess and by golly. It's still by guess and by golly, but at least there's the spreadsheet would crunch some numbers to produce some results more quickly for me. I don't know how to use spreadsheets worth a damn, so it's been a bit of a struggle, bit of a mess trying to get it do what I wanted it to do, but I can see the value in it for sure. And I think I'll probably start doing that moving forward. Although I still like the sort of just on paper method as well. So this project, we're estimating it's about 410 hours all in, including making a canvas cover for it, of which I've allotted about 30 hours worth of time. And I don't remember the exact number. I think we're about 77,000 to 7,500 in materials all in. So we'll see how that all plays out. I'm going to try and track it all very carefully. Now I'm going to be shooting some video while doing this, and that really screws with your productivity numbers. So I got to figure out a good method for getting some stuff on video such that I can still document how long it's going to take to build, because I really want to know whether or not I'm on the money. So one thing you can do when you're trying to figure out how long it's going to take you to build something, best thing you can do is find an existing design to which you can attribute reliable building time numbers. And so my first stop for that is usually Paul Gartside's website. I'll go on and sort of skim through his designs and try and find something that matches size, construction technique, and complexity, and see what kind of build times he allots to them. Because I know his numbers are pretty good because he builds these things himself. Designers that don't do the building themselves, it's always very suspicious. And companies that produce kits, I don't entirely trust their building time numbers either, because I mean, who's doing the building is so highly varied that I don't think it's realistic to trust those numbers exactly. But Paul Gartsides I trust. And so he had a boat called a Bosun. That was a strip built power boat, 15 feet long, little smaller in some respects, and it was about 350 hours. So I think it's pretty close. And so when I factor in adding in the cover and a little bit of extra time for fudging around, because I've got to put extra time into lofting because I don't have faired lines. Whereas if I had Paul Gartside's plans, I would have something that's much more reliable, even if I had to loft it. I'm not sure if he's got full size patterns that would come in those plans. Probably, I think for that boat, he would probably have full size mold patterns. Anyhow, so I got to factor in that extra time to develop the lofting and the patterns and design the scantlings. That is, design the parts that go into the boat, what size they need to be, and such. So the last thing I thought I'd just touch on is like one of my side projects is building banjos, right? So I've been working on this banjo for quite a while now, not very frequently. It's still in pieces, still got a ways to go. But this is sort of a based on a banjo by R.A. Sanders. Now, I had one of his original banjos in the shop a while back and took the lines off of it and stuff, drew up some plans. And this is sort of inspired by that. And I've been calling it my Chippendale banjo. Any of you that followed my Stork Banjo Instagram or page would probably be familiar with some of the work I've done on that. And so it's going to be like a top tensioning hoop, meaning it's going to have through bolts that you screw from the top here that stretch the skin down over it. This is all done in white oak. The Sanders banjos were done in oak as well. Would have been a European or oak or English oak. Nominally, it's all about the same. The difference is I've given mine, his were fretless. I've given this one bone frets. So I bought like guitar bridge bone blanks and cut them down into little bone frets, and so set those all into the neck and rounded them over and such. And I've been playing around with this original like Viennese style Martin bird's mouth joint, which I wanted to do for the head just because it interests me. And then the head itself, this is all kind of cobbled together in a big pile here. I can't put it onto the neck. But the head itself has got a bone overlay with some black and white veneers under it, and then a brass overlay on top of that. It's sort of a an oak leaf motif on it. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. I need to take this over to the milling machine to bore some holes, because I was having some trouble with keeping the tuning peg holes alignment consistent from the brass to the rest of it for some reason. It was getting away from me. And yeah, I'm excited to get that eventually patched up, but it's sort of a side project. As I say, I don't have any, there's no customer for it. It's just for me, just out of my personal interest. All right, that's it for today. I just want to share those little things with you. So we'll have videos about the Polsbull boat along the way. There'll be another West System video coming up next week, probably, if they get back to me. And as for the Gannett series, I think I'm kind of wrapped up on that. There might be one or two more in the works for it, but I have to go through the footage and see if there's anything that makes sense. But my basic idea with that was just sort of to have some foundational techniques I could present, which I think I did a pretty good job of. And I know my footage gets choppy beyond the planking stage because I was getting deeper and deeper into the build and just needed to put more time into it. So that boat's done. I delivered it down to the customer in the States earlier in the summer, and so that boat's now been out and getting used around the Camano Island area. So that's great. I'm glad to see that happen. I don't have launch videos. I don't have sailing videos. If you're here for that stuff, go to a different channel because this is a building channel, not a sailing channel. So my apologies if that irks you, but that's just the way things go around here. We're interested in the building primarily. All right. Thanks for watching, folks. If you'd like to support this channel, please consider joining me over on Patreon. You can find links in the corner or down in the description. And till next time, keep your stick on the ice.